I see El Salvador looking like the Jetsons pretty soon here. Like,
Wow.
I think it's gonna look pretty futuristic. One or two of my clients called me and they said, what's going on with this Bitcoin thing? I said, I checked it out before, it looks like a scam. He said, no, Jamie, tonight when you get home, you gotta figure out what this is. There's something going on here. And that was the end of my normal life. I was onboarding tens of thousands of new Bitcoiners at that time. I'm responsible for a huge contingent of early Canadians buying their first Bitcoin. And the Canadian banks said, we don't care. We never want to do business with you again. We see what you're doing here and fuck you. The Canadian people, my neighbors, are who I was most disappointed with. They said, oh, diversity is our strength. And I'm like, not really. Nobody trusts each other. Everyone's living in their own little parallel societies. And I look at Canada as, if it's not already a failed state, it's failed. And El Salvador is leading the world. Like, where else are you gonna go? There's no extra tax to use Bitcoin. We have a Bitcoin office. We've got this whole Bitcoin strategy. I'm like, who else is doing any of this? It's not like there's a huge flood of people coming here, but as it grows, I want to make sure those controls are in place to protect the Salvadoran culture. And I say that as an immigrant. El Salvador started their Bitcoin project. They set up a bunch of things. They set up this Bitcoin law. They changed the laws. And obviously as a Bitcoiner, I'm not happy about that. There was a handful of things that they conceded, but the critical things they actually didn't concede on. The El Salvador project is bigger than just the Bitcoin kids, the Bitcoin nerds. President Bukele has a lot going on in this country, a lot of infrastructure projects, a lot happening, and having access to cheap cash is super important. The reality is they have a boatload of Bitcoin. They have a rollout strategy, and they're like, fuck it, we're just gonna keep going.
Welcome everyone to another Builder Spotlight interview. Today I am here with the one and only Jamie Robinson.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, thank you for coming on and speaking to us and telling us your story. We're over here in his new store, North Wine Company, and I'm really excited to learn more about you, your journey, and this store. What brought it about, how the idea come about, and what was the execution like. So I guess we'll start with kind of you. Where are you originally from, Jamie?
I grew up in Toronto, in Canada. Spent my whole life in Toronto, went to University of Toronto, and then got a little sick of this downtown city lifestyle. When you grow up in Toronto, you want to live closer and closer to the CN Tower. The closer you are to the CN Tower, which is the big icon there, the cooler you are. And so I was like moving closer and closer and closer. Got this condo like right around the corner from the CN Tower, and I lived there for like a year and a half. And the whole time I was there, I never met anybody. Didn't make any friends. Was trying to like do things, be social. Didn't know a single person in my building. Had lots of friends from high school and from like my younger days. I'm still in touch with all my high school buddies, but was getting sort of closer and closer downtown, and was really not getting more fulfilled at all. Like I was really kind of honestly feeling more isolated, more cold. And I said, this isn't going to work for me. And so, and at that time, I was running my first Bitcoin company. This was in 2013, and opened up this Bitcoin company, was doing that. We can talk about that in a little bit, but bought an RV and said, you know what, I don't want to live here anymore. I'm going to buy an RV and start traveling. And so I was working online, started traveling around in my RV, trying to figure out where I might, fit in a little better. And toured around North America a few times and found this really cool mountain town in British Columbia called Nelson, and ended up moving there and just said, this is the place for me. Lived in Nelson for a little bit, and then I saw what was happening in El Salvador. And so, but I'm from Canada, from Toronto originally, and then I have a bunch of sort of British Columbia roots as well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I want to bring it back a little further.
Yeah.
Kind of growing up.
Yeah.
What was life like?
Suburban lifestyle, really nice neighborhood, safe neighborhood, great little, suburban streets to ride my bike on, beautiful park right around the corner. I just had a newborn, so I'm reflecting a lot of my childhood, and I'm thinking, what kind of childhood did my parents build for me? And, it was, detached house, front yard, backyard, very like American dream, and super safe, great little neighborhood, mall, like, kilometer and a half away. And
what were you into?
I was computer programming. Yeah. I was a computer nerd. My parents saw the internet coming, and they said, that we had dial-up internet at the house, and they said, this is going to be something. And my dad he would always make sure we had like a new computer and we had internet, and he's like, go play. He's like putting me and the computer together, and he's like, work on this, play with this, mess around with this thing, hack this thing. And so I was pretty introvert. I was a computer nerd. Didn't have a lot of friends when I was growing up, and then grade 8, grade 9, I started getting more social. I really started coming out of my shell.
Nice.
And but no, I was a nerdy little computer nerd, and I loved it. It was fun, and I still love computers. So
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I was wondering where, because I know you're technically proficient here,
yes,
and I was wondering when that kind of interest was sparked.
my dad
Nice.
was he saw the internet. He saw computers. He saw all this, and back then it was like it's weird to have a computer in your house, and he went out and spent like $2,000 on this computer and big monitor and everything, and bought the AOL internet and hooked it up to the phone line. And but he saw it and he was like, I really want you to work on this and enjoy this, play around with it. And so that's really what got me into it.
Okay.
And then from there, it just kind of barrel rolled.
So I take it you kind of throughout your travels after getting out of Toronto,
Yeah.
you discovered Bitcoin?
Yeah. So I discovered Bitcoin while I was still in Toronto.
Uh-huh.
And I had my own little consulting firm,
Mm.
just a handful of clients. And I kind of fell into this because I was good at computers and I was good at technology. I had sort of people in my circle sort of saying, "Hey, Jamie, can you come to my office and like help us use technology better?" Like we have this feeling where we have systems, we have computers, we have processes, or we take this paper and it goes here, and we take this paper, it goes here. We have all these business processes, but we just feel like we're not using technology well enough, and our competitors are using it better than we are. Can you come and just like assess what we're doing and see if there's any way you can spruce us up? And that's kind of how it started. And then from there, it kind of barrel rolled, and I built my own little firm and had a bunch of clients around Toronto and was helping them with their various technology problems. And they get a new contract to do this, and the terms say you have to have this technology solution. I'd say, all right, Jamie, get in there. Same as my dad used to do. Get in there and solve this for us. And so it was great. I was making great money. And then one or two of my clients called me and they said, what's going on with this Bitcoin thing? What's Bitcoin? And I said, I checked it out before. It looks like a scam. It's just like some e-gold or something. Like, don't pay attention. And he said, no, Jamie, stop what you're like tonight when you get home. You got to figure out what this is. There's something going on here. And I said, okay, all right, I'll take a look into it. And that was the end of my normal life because at that moment, I got into Bitcoin.
What year was
The
this?
2013. This
Uh-huh.
was in like March of 2013,
Uh-huh.
and Bitcoin was kind of doing one of its big ramp ups from I missed the dollar, $2, $5 phase, but it was like ramping up from like 50, 60, 70, 80, and that's what got his attention. And I started learning about it, dived right in, got the Bitcoin client software on my computer, started making transactions, really started to understand what it was, and the light clicked. I was not a fan of government money printing, not a fan of government debt, had a rough understanding of how money works, and was definitely had an appetite for something cooler.
Going into that, so did you have like formal education or were you kind of someone self-taught?
Yeah, so a lot of the technology stuff was self-taught,
Mm.
but I did, I went through high school in Ontario, and then I went to the University of Toronto, and I got a degree in digital enterprise management,
Mhm.
which is basically a business degree, bachelor business degree, but it focused on digital businesses. And so really it was sort of the year 3, year 4 was kind of getting into sort of digital business. And so I had a bit of formal, but not, the stuff that I was doing for my clients that was pretty much all self-taught, YouTube, Google, figuring stuff out, saying, okay, we have this problem. I know how computers think, and I got good at translating human instructions into what a computer could do for them. And
Mm.
I became that kind of bridge. So I'd go in and listen to what people were saying, listen to their business needs, and say, okay, hold on, let me see if I can translate this into a program, into something. And then I'd either build it myself or I would, find software that could do it and buy it and deploy it for them. And so, but no, just generally pretty self-taught with a lot of this stuff. And programming self-taught, all the nitty gritty stuff, self-taught.
I would imagine Bitcoin just kind of reinforced that too, right?
Yeah,
Trying to
yeah,
figure that out in 2013.
yeah, 100%. And so you had to really get into it, just sift through all the technical mumbo jumbo, and a lot of people they would find Bitcoin like I did before, hear about Bitcoin, see it, not understand it, and brush it off. And that's incredibly expensive for the Bitcoin network when people do that. And so it became a focus of my career was solving that problem. And that was my first Bitcoin company.
And so you said you had some sort of understanding of how money
Yeah.
worked before you got into Bitcoin. Um, where did that come from?
The internet.
Yeah.
Just, seeing that, like that, there's like that debt time bomb, debt clock website. And just, I think when I was younger, I wasn't very good with money. The banks gave me a credit card at 18 and I
Mhm.
racked up a bunch of debt. And then I worked it off and paid it off. And I sort of had this understanding of how debt cycles, start to, how you get into a bunch of debt and then have to kind of pay it off. And what happens if you don't? And then I started seeing how the government was spending, became a little more political, started saying, we're just racking up all this debt. Like we're just printing all this money. I think there's this, like, I don't know if it's manhood or adulthood, that's as a responsible adult, you're like,
It's unsustainable.
are you going to balance your books like this? Like I have to balance my books. My home has to have balanced books. Are any level of our government going to balance their books? And you start to pay more closer and closer attention, and you start, when you see articles and you see people talking about it, you're like, yeah, like this has got to be a problem. um, isn't this like a big house of cards, and isn't this going to hurt the people at the bottom the most? So I started just developing an informal interest in it. Obviously helpless, there's that feeling of I'm just totally helpless. What can I do to solve this? Nothing. um, and So just in the back of my mind, there's this sort of hole that's growing, looking for a proposed solution, looking for something that might be able to solve this. And there's the shared responsibility of your government debt and your government, all the issues there. But you sort of have this sense that if the house of cards comes tumbling down, it's going to hurt me and my home too. And how can I protect myself and protect my family, um, against an incident that might be forthcoming? And I think as an adult, at least as a man of the house, you want to be protective. And when you see something, a fire growing, you're immediately like, how do I protect myself from this? And what actions can I take now to protect myself?
And I assume when you found Bitcoin, it was like, oh, here's a way to protect myself against this fire.
Yeah, and here's a proposed solution. This might be able to help me.
Mhm.
And as I got more and more into it, I was like, this is really looking like a great option. But at the beginning, it was like, could this? On one side, I have this problem, this fire is growing, and I have this concern, and then I got this possible solution. And so you start to kind of marry them together in your mind, and the more you learn about it, the more you say, wow, this could work. Sure, it's a proposed solution. There could be some technical issues. There could be some technical things. There's, it's backed by mathematics and the internet. So what if something breaks? But I'm like, hey, I have this problem. I need to fill it. Could this do it?
Mhm.
And or at least could this be part of a hybrid solution to protect myself from something that might happen in the future?
Yeah, speaking of hybrid solutions, I guess another solution to that is discovering El Salvador and
Yeah, yeah,
coming down here. Can we
yeah,
talk a little bit about that? So you're traveling around in RV
yeah.
and you're in what city again was that?
In Nelson, in British
Nelson,
Columbia.
British
Yeah,
Columbia.
in the Rockies there.
And
Beautiful, beautiful town.
and then El Salvador comes on your radar.
Yeah, so I was traveling in my RV, running my first Bitcoin business from 2013 to 2018, and then at some point I closed that business, and then took a few years off. Honestly, kind of get a little burnt out. I was onboarding tens of thousands of new Bitcoiners at that time in Canada,
Tens
and
of thousands?
tens of thousands. Yeah, I was onboarding. I'm responsible for a huge contingent of early Canadians buying their first Bitcoin.
Wow.
It was a big operation. It was called quickbt.com, and it was a really simple website. You come on the website, you put in your Bitcoin address, how much Bitcoin you want, and you could pay with your debit card to buy some Bitcoin. And it had been tried before, but people, when you're bridging a debit card system, which is a reversible payment method, with a irreversible payment method, you get all this fraud, all kinds of problems happen. You get hackers, all kinds of stuff happens. And so what I did with QuickBT is you could only buy up to $50 at a time on my website. So the idea was, hey, you found out about Bitcoin. You're here. You learned about it. Now you want to get some. We can't afford to lose you. We need to capture you into the network. Let me help you buy $20, $5, $40, $50, 24/7, instantly, no KYC. Just put in how much Bitcoin you want, where you want the Bitcoin delivered to, pay with your Canadian debit card, and we'll have a transaction broadcast in seconds automatically.
And what year was this?
2013 to 2018. So
To 2018.
till 2018.
Wow, 5 year run.
5 years, 24/7, and by the end of it, I was like, it's 5 years in Bitcoin is like a long time,
Yeah.
especially when you're running 24-hour operations. and the site was completely automatic, so that it was all pre-programmed. It did everything automatically. There was no human intervention, and we onboarded about 90,000 people in that period, and it became the de facto first stop. So, people,
90,000.
90,000 early Canadians. Yeah, a lot.
Wow. You are a pioneer in the Bitcoin space.
Thank you. Yeah, I was sort of low key. The whole site was kind of low key. It looked really simple. It was really easy. It wasn't like a big flashy operation,
Sure.
but Bitcoiners would want to get their friends into the system, and they would say, hey, buy $5 here. This is how you get started. When you want to make an investment, go to an exchange and go and do the KYC thing, send your passport and blah, 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 blah. But your starting point, your day one is at quickbt.com. And I, basically developed an army of people in Canada that would go around and say, no, this is where you got to get started. There's
It reminds me of the early days with the Bitcoin faucets.
yes,
Right.
exactly. It was essentially a faucet, but you had to pay for it.
Yeah.
And we worked with all the Canadian debit cards. We were integrated in the financial system, and it was great. It was a great product. I made lots of money doing it, but most importantly, onboarded a lot of Bitcoiners.
And what was the business model? Did you capture a spread?
Yeah, it was 5%.
Okay.
So, and if you're buying $20 worth, you're paying, not much at all, and so
Yeah.
it's a couple pennies. And so
Smart.
people didn't care. They were like, yeah, that's fine. And I'm selling millions and millions of dollars of Bitcoin. And so it was a huge operation. By the end of it, it was a huge operation. And eventually we started having all kinds of problems with banks, and I was fighting them and blah, blah, blah. And then it got to the point where I was like,
You got in there before the banks could figure out what was going on.
yeah. And then they started seeing what was going on, and I had lots of problems with banks. And then eventually they started debanking me personally. And I never used any of my personal accounts with QuickBT. It was always corporate accounts. But they eventually started bullying me personally, and the Canadian banks said, we don't care. We never want to do business with you again. We see what you're doing here, and fuck you. And there was no chargebacks. There was no problems. There was nothing. It was super easy system. We had almost no fraud at all, and they were like, no, we can't allow this system to proliferate like this, or the risk that you present is too great for the fees we're charging you. There could have been a variety of reasons, but once they started debanking me personally, they started canceling my personal bank accounts, which had nothing to do with QuickBT. That's when I was like, oh shit, these guys are mad, and I've done enough. I've onboarded 90,000 people. I'm going to take a few years off and just relax. And there's other companies. The Bull Bitcoin was growing. ShakePay was growing. A bunch of other companies were growing. And I said, you guys take the torch. I'm out of here. I want some time off. So I want to hide out for a little bit. And so then that's what I did in Nelson. I kind of hid out for a little bit. And then, but to answer your question, then I saw what was happening in Salvador, and I was like,
What year is this?
20. I moved to El Salvador 23. So was following Nayib Bukele. Saw what was happening in 22, saw the growth, saw what was happening, and by 2023, April in 23, I said, I got to go down there and just do a fact-finding mission. I got to see what's going on. I want to see what's actually happening. And so came for a week, did 4 days in the city, 4 days in El Zonte, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. And I wasn't immediately hooked. I was like, okay, this is cool. I love what's happening with Bitcoin here. And also by this time, by the way, so I closed my company in 2018. Now it's 2023. Been a few years, taking some time off, kind of cooled off a little bit, and just working on some personal stuff. And I was like, Bitcoin, you haven't taken over the world yet. What's going on? It's 2023. Why haven't you taken over the world yet? Didn't I do my part at least? At least a chunk of it. And I was kind of like, all right, we got to get back into this. I got to get back on the ground here. And no one else is going to do this for us. We got to do it. And so came down here, saw what was happening. It was cool. But, third world country, developing nation, lots of things are unfinished. It's a project. And I was like, okay, this is cool, but, maybe not for me yet. Went back to Canada because it was just a week. And then spent the summer in Canada. And every little thing, all the woke bullshit, every little thing would just started chipping away at me. And I was like, man, I just want to go to El Salvador. I am done with this. And at some point, it was in about August, I said, that's it. Let's go. And talk to the, she's now my fiance, but at that time she was my girlfriend. And I said, what do you think? Do you think we should go? And she's like, let's take a chance. Let's do it. And we packed up our things and sold our cars, and came down here and started a whole new life.
Wow.
So
Amazing. So, got a question.
yeah, I know, I covered a lot there. Yeah.
There is a freedom aspect, kind of a libertarian
Hmm.
vein that runs through Bitcoin.
Hmm.
In terms of your like political leanings or kind of worldview,
Yeah.
does that somewhat resonate with you as well? Or
Definitely. I actually, El Salvador, people, some people call El Salvador freedom country.
hmm
It's freedom country to a certain extent. I actually call it security country,
hmm
safety country.
hmm
I actually think some of those notes are stronger and a better pitch.
hmm
Um, you know, I think it's a fair criticism that the government has good total control here. You know, there is a lot of control. There's a very much you know, they got all the seats in Congress and all the this and that. They can pass whatever laws they want. And you know, I'm honestly like right in the middle of the political leanings. You know, I consider myself a classic liberal.
hmm
You know, very freedom leaning, very you know, fiscal conservative, individual freedom, less government or appropriate government.
Appropriate government is interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, the appropriate level of government. But you know, I've seen both sides of it. I've seen what happens when the government can't do their job because there's too much. You know, there's too much. You know, red tape or whatever. They can't arrest these guys. They can't do what just needs to get done.
hmm
And I think from an idealist perspective, I'm like, no, I love individual freedoms. People should have as much individual freedom as possible, and we should have that. But in practice, there is balance, you know, and I want to live in a safe place. I want to live somewhere safe. I want my kids to grow up where there aren't criminals and we actually arrest the criminals, and it isn't just total anarchy.
And that government isn't actually funding and supporting degeneracy as
Yeah,
well, right?
you totally. And so I've seen, you know, I think Canada and to a certain extent Europe too, sort of is a, you know, it's maybe not the freedom side of things, but it's they're pushing the limits of a lot of things. And seeing what was happening in El Salvador, you know, I'm like, no, it is handy to have competent leadership. They can just get things done,
Mm.
and it does mean sacrificing some freedoms. You know, we are. I wouldn't consider myself. I'm free to do what I want to do because things are safe. You know, I can open up a business in an entrenched industry here and feel safe. I'm free to do a lot of things, but you know, there are some things that I feel less free on. You know, you know, in terms of maybe due process or you know, trial by jury or you know, there's certain things that you know, you don't get here, and but I'm like, but you know what? It's all about trade-offs,
Yep.
and I like the set of trade-offs here better than the trade-offs in Canada. And you know, and I think it is very much dependent on Nayib Bukele. I think that if and when you know, political leaders come and go, you know, they're not here forever, and they can't be. And uh, you know, it's a risk. You know, what happens when there's another leader in charge of this machine? And you know, we'll see what happens then. But for now, I have complete confidence in Nayib Bukele, and I'm kind of like, okay, let's. I'd rather give up some freedoms, live under a state of emergency, but have things functioning and working.
Yeah,
And I think it's just a better set of trade-offs.
for sure. I ask because, you know, I talk to a lot of Canadians that have moved down here,
Yeah.
and they also grew frustrated with Canada and their response to COVID.
Yep.
And I was wondering if that impacted your decision as well.
Definitely, I fled during COVID. I fled to Mexico. I was hanging out, drinking tequila on the beach,
Okay.
and just hiding out. And I could not stand what was happening in Canada. And it wasn't just. I actually don't blame the government. Actually, I'm not as mad at the government of Canada as I am the people of Canada. The people enabled in Canada. The people are very much in control, and the people set the tone. And there is Canada, the Canadian government is actually quite reactive to what people want, and they do want the votes, and they are, you know, it is a tight race between left and right, and but the Canadian people, my neighbors, are who I was most disappointed with. There were so many neighbors in Canada that just went along with all this and said, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. And they weren't willing to stick their neck out. They didn't want to lose their job. And I was just super disappointed with it all. And I think that was probably a big tipping point.
Okay, that's interesting. That's a good segue into kind of my next question. What's life like here? And you know, I thought about going this direction because now you're surrounded by a lot of Bitcoiners who believe in, freedom-oriented principles and sound money, as well as you have a great, polite society over here
Mm-hmm.
with the people. So,
Mm-hmm.
what's life like in El Salvador for you?
It's great.
What
There's always something new. There's always new people moving here. There's this momentum that is so sexy and so attractive. I just like this sense of that tomorrow's going to be better than today, and that feeling to me is it's incredible, and it's a big reason why I'm here. I think, when I look back to Canada, tomorrow is not going to be better than today in Canada, and there is that shared feeling, and it's daunting, it's terrifying,
such a downer.
it's such a downer, and it's just like ugh, like, and you want something more. You want to live somewhere where tomorrow is going to be better, and I think it has a huge impact on your mental health. It has a huge impact on your outlook, on your productivity, on so much, and I. Life here it's fun, and I never know who I'm going to meet. There's always new people moving here. There's new things being built. There's new exciting things happening all the time. And so
How long did it take for you to settle in here?
um, I'd say a year, honestly, because I bounced around. I started at the beach.
Mm-hmm.
Too hot for me with Canadian blood. It's just too hot at the beach.
Mm-hmm.
And love going down there, but it's just at zero sea level. It's too hot. And so I bounced around different areas, staying in different Airbnbs, trying out different areas, different altitudes, because you can really pick your temperature by picking your altitude.
Yep.
And I don't have the weather app on my phone. I have the altitude app. And so I'm always, I'm like, all right, I'm here. What's the altitude? Okay, we're at 4,000 feet. Interesting, interesting. And so I'm at about 3,200 where I live. And uh, so it took me about a year really to get settled and to find the right place.
What was the process like moving here? What did you have any challenges? Did you find it pretty easy?
Physically moving here was easy. I didn't bring a lot of stuff.
Mhm.
I sold a lot of my stuff. We kind of made like a plan B pile in Canada, and we put some stuff in a locker, and then um, moved down here, lived down here for a little bit, and then said, okay, that's it. We don't need that stuff anymore. But we didn't really bring much. We suitcased a bunch of stuff back and forth. Every time we would go back, we'd bring
Sure.
more. We'd have more suitcases, and so that's kind of how we got our stuff down here. It was pretty easy to move here, pretty easy to get here, easy to get residency. It was super easy. And but the biggest thing was finding housing that I call it American class housing. So most of the housing here is all Latin class. So a lot of outside space, not a lot of air conditioning, not a lot of hot water in some places, and but I wanted American class housing, and so with all the comforts of home and recreating all the comforts from home is at least as expensive as living back home. You know what I mean? Like it's expensive, but uh, it took a bit of time to do that. Found a great condo building, live there now, and so took a bit of time to figure out what the differences. And there are some cultural differences. So some areas are louder, bars are open late. You've got dogs running around barking. There are some things that are different. And so I when people are thinking about coming here, I definitely say get Airbnbs in a couple different, do a month here, a month here, a month here, and try different areas, or even just a couple days in different places. And it really makes a big difference
That's
because
interesting.
if you sign a lease somewhere and then all of a sudden there's insane construction happening next door, because that happens around here.
Happened to me.
And because there is so much construction, which is a good thing, there's so much progress here. But you can move in somewhere, you think it's quiet, and then all of a sudden there's a massive project happening next door. And so you have to be agile, you have to be patient, and you want to move somewhere that's modern, but not so modern that everywhere around you is under construction and you're in a construction zone forever. And so you have to kind of find that balance and find what works. And everything's new. It's a different society, different people, different everything's different. And so it took a bit of time to figure that out. And after the first year, I was like, okay, I'm settled. I like where I am. And we found our current place maybe like 8 months in, but then it's like getting furniture, getting the place painted, getting it really, really nice, finding the really great furniture stores, finding the great.
It takes a while to find your resources, from my experience,
Yes.
because it's not as convenient or
Mhm.
obvious.
Obvious. That's the thing. It's
Yeah.
when you're coming from Canada, you're like, oh well, I'll just go to the IKEA, like, or I'll just go to this place or that place. And so here you have to. There's a little bit of problem solving. You got to figure things out, and it does shake some people out. Some people don't make it. Some people are like, this isn't for me. It's too frustrating, and we definitely lose some people to that. But it's getting easier. It's getting better. And there's people that they're really helpful. Like there are some almost like full service moving companies that help people. Like they'll live in like the local guys that I met at your meetup, and they're like, no, we really help people get. So we don't just get them a place and get them residency. We help them integrate.
There's like an onboarding process to El Salvador.
Kind of, yeah. And it's just because things are different, and it's getting more similar. Like it's getting more similar. It's getting better, but it's a different country, and things totally different. You don't know the stores. You don't know the chains. You don't know the way of the land, and so you gotta. There is some. And when in Rome.
Yeah, and any practical advice beyond just getting Airbnbs here and there that you would have?
Definitely pack your patience. I think if people that come here, thinking that this is just going to be another U.S. city, they usually are the ones that kind of rage quit and they get really frustrated and they're like, nah, I'm just so mad. Just pack your patience. Remember that you're in somewhere new. Trying to recreate every aspect of what you're fleeing from is, probably not even the smartest thing. You want to embrace some change, practically, yeah, I'd recommend stay in different places, learn the neighborhoods, and talk to people. Say, hey, where did you get this? Where did you buy that? How did you get this? How did you get that? Join some groups. Join some WhatsApp groups. There's handy groups that have lots of information and can really, really help you with the transition and make some friends early on that are kind of either at different stages that, also with you just moving here, people that have been here for a couple of years and people that have maybe, lived here since before Bukele. And
so get a good perspective on the country.
Yeah, and really understand what you're getting yourself into because it's you're not just moving to another U.S. city.
Is there anything that still frustrates you?
Great wine selection, but solving that one.
So that's really actually pretty cool, and we'll get into it. But just as a side note here, it's like El Salvador is a developing country, and it's an economy and market that's been in the dark ages for like 40, 50 years. And so there's all these gaps, and there's all these pain points. But if you're an entrepreneurial minded person, that's opportunity.
I see, and some people, they see unfinished buildings or they see, people on the side of the road selling something. And they go, and I'm like, I see opportunity. I think and that lens that you have really matters.
And you're walking the walk. I mean, you wanted a finer selection of wine, so you
absolutely
built a wine store.
So I'm like, I built a wine store. I built a wine distribution company.
Yeah, and now it benefits all of us. Now we have, because I say wealth, right, isn't the money in your bank account or the sats that you have in cold storage.
Yeah.
It's kind of your access to goods and services, right?
Totally.
And so, this actually builds up the wealth of the country. It makes everyone here a little bit more prosperous.
Absolutely. So there's a handful of things, that still need work. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities. Really, like anything that's like I'm dying to get fixed. There isn't like anything like, oh my God, this is a deal breaker. Obviously, I'm still here. There's no like deal breakers, and anything you can't get. There's great shipping companies. I can have stuff from Amazon here in like 2 or 3 days. I can get stuff here quickly, and so there's a lot of opportunities still, but there's no like deal breakers that like, oh, this isn't gonna work. And so I think the real big deal breakers I'm trying to solve because I'm like, I need this. And so whether it's the wine, the Bitcoin hardware store, the Bitcoin hardware stuff I want to get, Bitcoin education. The big thing I really want to get here is a great Bitcoin bank. We really need a completely frictionless link between Bitcoin and the domestic banking system here. We're really missing that. We had some good options, but they've mostly disappeared, and so we need some good options here that just make it completely frictionless to go back and forth. But I understand there's more. I'm not privy to everything that's going on. There's more going on, and so it's tricky. It's building
a process.
Building Bitcoin, bridging the dollar world and the Bitcoin world. I did it for years. It's not an easy game, and so I understand there's more to it, and so but we'll get there.
Yeah,
we'll get there.
Well, I guess anything you would change differently in your journey to El Salvador? Something you look back and be like, I wish I would have done that differently.
Probably a lot, actually. Knowing what I know now. It's easy knowing what I know now. Now I know all the great stores. I know the great neighborhoods. I know there's lots of things. I could save a lot of money knowing what I know now. It was expensive, the process of learning, not just time and stress, and it was things that I was like, I wish I knew that. And so there's lots of stuff that I would change. But honestly, the adventure's half the fun.
Yeah.
And when you're coming up on 40, having a fun adventure in your life is fun. And I think the people that enjoy El Salvador the most are the people that love that sense of adventure and challenge and problem solving. And so yes, there's lots I would change, but it wouldn't have been as fun.
And I'm 43, and to be able to have a journey like this
Right.
at this stage of my life is I consider it like a massive blessing, a
Right.
privilege. This has been one big adventure after another.
Every
over
single
here.
day.
Meeting interesting people,
Yeah.
hearing interesting ideas, seeing interesting projects, and I'm just like blown away.
Right.
Like there's so much energy happening here, entrepreneurial energy, optimistic energy. And I think that's only going to continue here.
That's a big part of what keeps me here.
Yeah.
Who am I going to meet tomorrow?
Yeah.
Who am I going to meet tomorrow? Who's going to walk in? Who's going to walk in the wine store? Who's going to walk in the hardware store? Who's going to walk into my life? And
The network that's being created here is just incredible.
it's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun. And yeah, when you're at our age, it's like, people are looking for that.
Yeah.
And people have like the midlife crisis, and they start burning out because they have this like, oh, I guess this is it now.
Yeah, it's all downhill.
It's all downhill from here, and it's like, well, not if you move to El Salvador.
Yeah, you're just peaking
and so-
over here.
Right. We're just getting started.
Yeah.
So, and that's a big. So no, I wouldn't change. Wouldn't change much.
Okay. Well, let's get into then what you've built since you've been here, because you haven't been just sitting around sipping margaritas and drinking wine.
Yeah.
You've been actually building. So let's get into the projects that you've worked on here.
So a bunch of stuff. The first thing I did right when I came here is I opened a Bitcoin Lightning app and got registered under the Bitcoin law here. And was the concept with our app was, let's say I wanted to onboard you to Bitcoin Lightning, and you don't have a Bitcoin Lightning wallet. You're my taxi driver. You're my anybody, and you don't have a Bitcoin Lightning wallet. But I want to send you Lightning. And there's sort of this same thing when the email was invented. There was a problem. Everyone's like, well, this isn't going to work because both people have to have email, right? Like this is never going to scale. So, but and that we have the same problem with Lightning, right? We have Lightning wallets, but not everybody has a Lightning wallet. So how do I get these people into the network, and how do I get them in fast? And so with this Lightning wallet that I developed, the way it works is you can go onto the website, and you can type in anybody's email address. It just so happens to piggyback on email. But let's say someone doesn't have a Lightning wallet. You're like, I want to send you some Lightning. You can type in anybody's email address anywhere in the world without their consent. Type in their email address, and it will instantly make a Lightning wallet for that email address, custodial, obviously. And then you can send them Lightning. You send them some Bitcoin Lightning. It goes to our app. And then we send them a claim email and say, hey, you've just got your first Bitcoin Lightning now. Here's some instructions to get set up with a wallet, and please claim your sats within 30 days. Otherwise, we'll start charging you a fee because we don't want to be your bank. And so it was called Accept LN, and it was a super, super easy way to onboard new people to Bitcoin and Bitcoin Lightning. And started growing, got some decent traction. And however, I had some misunderstandings about some of the Bitcoin law here and how it was working, and I wasn't getting the best legal advice at the time. And so I eventually got to a point where it's like, wait a minute, there are KYC rules here. You can't just be a custodial wallet for people and just have their email address. You need more information about your clients. And so I said, all right, I'm going to put this one on pause for now. I'm not trying to piss off the country to my new home. And so I put that one on pause, and I might pull that one out in a little bit. But
let me ask you something.
Yeah.
What were your general thoughts around the changes to the Bitcoin law regarding the IMF?
So, yeah, a good, great topic. El Salvador started their Bitcoin project. They set up a bunch of things. They set up this Bitcoin law. They started this Bitcoin Federal Reserve. They changed the law so that there would be no extra tax burden to use Bitcoin in El Salvador. There was no, you still pay sales tax, but there's no extra tax burden to use Bitcoin. They set up the Chivo ATM network. They set up the Chivo personal wallet app. They did a bunch of things right at the get-go to get started. And then, and I'm not privy to what actually happened because I don't have the clearance to know exactly what's going on behind the scenes. But Nayib Bukele, President Bukele has a lot going on in this country, a lot of infrastructure projects, a lot happening, and having access to cheap cash is super, super important. And at some point he said, okay, I want to take on more loans from the IMF. I want to build more schools. I want to do this. I want more infrastructure. And so the IMF, interestingly threatened by Bitcoin in some capacity. Either they thought it was, some kind of financial instability or risk for the country, or they were legitimately threatened by it. By its president said, "Hey, we'll give you more loans, but you need to make these concessions to your Bitcoin program." And obviously, as a Bitcoiner, I'm not happy about that. I'm like, damn, I don't want you to make any concessions at all. Don't do that. But I have to respect the fact that this is a big project. The El Salvador project is bigger than just the Bitcoin kids, the Bitcoin nerds. There's a lot more going on here. And at the surface level, the concessions they made were pretty significant. They said, all right, we are going to stop buying new Bitcoin. We are going to wind down our Chivo ATM network, wind down our Chivo wallet app. We're going to not accept Bitcoin at the federal level anymore. There was a handful of things that they conceded, but the critical things they actually didn't concede on. They didn't concede on not making any extra tax burden to use Bitcoin, which I think is the biggest thing in the world. Being able to use Bitcoin without having any reporting and capital gains changes is the money right now. That is the biggest thing. Bitcoin cannot compete as money if you have to report every change in value like you do in the US or Canada. It'll never work. We have to fix that. It's step one, and that was step one in El Salvador, and they did not concede that. They did not concede owning a boatload of Bitcoin federally. The one thing that Bitcoiners don't like is, there's got to be more going on here, is this one Bitcoin a day thing. We're going to keep buying a Bitcoin a day, and I think it was pretty obvious early on that this is a rollout strategy. It's a marketing thing, and we have X Bitcoin, and then we have our public address. But Bitcoiners will not live in two concurrent realities. They don't like that. Bitcoiners like to have one clear reality, and the marketing strategy that they went with, they said, hey, we're going to do this one Bitcoin a day thing. And then when the IMF said, hey, you guys are not allowed to do that anymore, and we find you in compliance, even though you're buying one Bitcoin a day, these two kind of realities kind of compete with each other. And I'm not sure what the marketing strategy is, why they continued this rollout. I can't speak for President Bukele or the office. But the reality is they have a boatload of Bitcoin. They have a rollout strategy, and they're like, fuck it, we're just going to keep going. We don't care. And I also noticed that they didn't close the Chivo Bitcoin ATM network. They didn't close the Chivo personal wallet. And there is this kind of like, we'll take the cheap cash, we'll keep taking the cheap cash, and we don't really care. But I think I would have done a better job or a different job communicating that, because Bitcoiners really don't like living in two realities.
Don't trust, verify.
Yes, and so it's like you can't say on one hand that you're buying a Bitcoin a day and then very clearly being in compliance with the IMF. The IMF people are saying, no, we're happy with what's happening here.
There's a huge contradiction.
And some people really didn't like it. I think it did. One of the things that El Salvador is incredible at is branding and marketing. And I think it did chip away at the marketing. However, there may be more going on that I'm not privy to. And so maybe it chipped away a little bit at the marketing, but maybe we own a shitload of Bitcoin, like Max has insinuated over 20,000 Bitcoins. Right now there's only 7,000 in the public thing. So maybe it's 40,000, maybe it's 50,000. Maybe we own a shitload of Bitcoin, and they're like.
So if I can get what you're saying kind of summarized here.
Yeah.
You're saying that, okay, they have obviously a stockpile of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And
they're rolling it out in time.
And they're rolling it out into the public wallet.
Yep.
And it's kind of a marketing strategy.
Yeah.
But these Bitcoin, they're basically there already.
Yeah.
And so it's just internal transfers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. I think that's super clear at this point. But they're not saying that. They're continuing this marketing strategy. And I don't know why. I'm not sure why, but I suspect there's a good reason. And I think the reason is they've got a lot of Bitcoin and they don't really want to show their cards yet. They're not ready to show their hand. And they say, we're just going to keep going with this marketing strategy, even if it chips away at our branding and our, even if
It
it
doesn't
chips
even have to be a marketing strategy either. It could be a political strategy too.
right. And so there's more going on here because El Salvador branding otherwise is tight.
Yeah.
And so why take the hit? Why take a hit because there was a lot, not just Bitcoiners domestically, internationally. People were like, what the fuck, El Salvador? These are two realities. Pick one. And so there's something else going on, some other strategy. And I suspect they have a lot of Bitcoin. And they like, we just don't want to tell you. So we're just going to keep this one Bitcoin a day thing going. And that's all we'll tell you. And by the way, look in the mirror. Do you guys have any Bitcoin? No. A bunch of other, all these commentators online. I'm like, go talk to your government. You guys don't have any Bitcoin. Germany sells all their Bitcoin. Canada doesn't own any Bitcoin. The U.S. has some, but federal seizures and some of them are in court cases. And I'm like, you guys focus on your own reserves. At least we got 7,000 Bitcoin. My kids are safe.
Interesting. So I was here during the whole IMF thing,
Yeah.
and yeah, I was disappointed, and I think a lot of people were as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of went into this mode of wait and see.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know the full picture.
I don't have the clearance.
I'm not a head of state.
Yeah.
I'm not in the Bitcoin office, nor do I have, clearance.
Yeah, I don't have the clearance.
So let's wait and see kind of how this plays out. I will say though, in the community here, in the grassroots community, the Bitcoiners that are here, it did cause a lot of controversy.
Yeah, a lot of rifts.
Yeah, a lot of rifts. A lot of people left.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like a Bitcoin bear market within the community over here, right?
Yeah.
And
And there's a bit of like loyalty tests going on. There was some, there was stuff going on. It was not the nicest period, and I think that's why people were kind of frustrated. They're like, just pick a reality, just pick one.
so it's been almost a year now.
Yeah.
Since the beginning of all of this stuff happened, but I would say within the grassroots movement here, the energy is coming back.
Totally.
The progress that's been made is starting to compound. People are starting to recognize it. The Bitcoiners that were unfazed stayed here, kept building regardless. Said, hey, Bitcoin is not about the government. Bitcoin is about sound money. We're going to build out anyways.
Yeah.
They're starting to see the fruits of their labor really, show. And
totally.
So my perspective is it's kind of like, these waves that you just have to ride.
Yeah.
And that's probably going to be the case for a long time.
There'll be other waves. And I think the people that are dedicated to the El Salvador project kind of realize that like this is just some marketing thing, and it's actually not that big a deal. El Salvador is still leading the world. Like, where else are you going to go? We have this massive federal stockpile. There's no extra tax to use Bitcoin, and we have a Bitcoin office. We've got this whole Bitcoin strategy. I'm like, who else is doing any of this? Everyone kicking and screaming about these two realities. I'm like, okay, fine, but it's not that big a deal, and clearly there's something else going on. So why don't we just move past it and keep building?
Yeah, the way I see it is like politics is a game that I don't know how to play, nor do I want to play it. But if you're going to be in that arena, you kind of have to play that game. And so governments are going to do what governments do. And
I am super curious. I'd love to know. I hope one day we get this is why we did that. Okay, all right. Like, I feel like it'll come out at some point. And I have a feeling it has to do with El Salvador owning substantially more Bitcoin than they are announcing. And they are intentionally saying, we can't tell you what we actually own, because if we say we're not buying a Bitcoin a day, then the conversation continues into, well, how much Bitcoin do you have? What is going on? And how often how are you going to transfer this Bitcoin into the public eye? And I think there is some geopolitical strategy here, and it'll come out. We'll find
interesting. Well, cool. That was a little bit of a
segue.
Yeah. But that's
it's an important topic. It's a big topic, and people are curious internationally. Like, it's not going to. People know about it. It's not just going to go away. And Bitcoiners are truth seekers.
Yeah.
They want to know, and they're not just going to. They're not going to let. It doesn't matter how much respect they have for a politician. They're not just going to let a politician or a government office tell them to shut up. They're like, hey, what's going on here? And so they are curious. They want to know.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about the principles that underline Bitcoin, you got transparency, honesty, you have, proof of work, you have don't trust, verify, all of these aspects. And so to invite these people into your country and then kind of, um, you know, have to play a political game and
Yeah,
expect them to play along is, I think,
it can be frustrating.
wishful thinking on their
Yeah,
part, perhaps.
yeah,
But I think it's just to be expected that Bitcoiners, whenever there's something awry, they're gonna make a big fuss of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think it's because I've lived in deception, and I've lived deception. And one of the things I'm looking for is transparency in my money and my government and everything. And so, but at the end of the day, there are geopolitical concerns, and there are bigger things that are above my clearance. And
Okay.
so,
So cool. We went from your Lightning
mhm.
app, which reminded me a lot of like a tipper app back in the day
Yeah,
on Twitter,
yeah,
where you could just tag someone's handle and say, "Hey, I'm sending you $5 in Bitcoin."
yeah,
Tipper app, send
yeah.
it to them,
And,
and there, it was held in a third party custody, but they could reclaim it, and therefore you
yeah,
would. I sent Peter Schiff Bitcoin back in the day,
nice,
like that.
nice.
So, um,
Yeah, so this is the same thing. Leverage the email system, and then you'd have this money on your email address. You'd log in with your email address. We'd send a code to you. You'd log in. You'd claim your coins. If you don't, we'll start harassing you with emails saying claim your coins, claim your coins, claim your coins, and
yeah,
so it's a cool little thing. It's a cool little thing. Help grow Lightning, but in El Salvador, they are trying to reestablish their banking system internationally. There was a lot of gang and drug money and all kinds of money in the banking system, and they're trying to clean it up. And so KYC is a big thing here, unfortunately, but it's for a bigger cause, a greater cause.
let me ask you something in
Yeah,
regards to that,
yeah,
right? There are some aspects to the developments that are happening here in which kind of are not so much in alignment with kind of the Bitcoin ethos,
yeah,
right? KYC
yeah,
probably being one of those things.
yeah.
What do you think about that?
So it is the KYC is a big tug of war because Bitcoiners don't like KYC, not because they have something to hide, but because they see how it's abused and they see what happens when data breaches happen. And I mean, look at what's happening in France with the tax collectors turning out to be dirty and selling information about people's personal tax returns to criminal organizations. And so Bitcoiners say we have the technology to be private, we want to be private, and so there is this pull
Tension?
towards privacy, but at the same time, you've got a country that was blacklisted from the partially blacklisted from the SWIFT system. Really in trouble internationally, didn't have a good banking reputation, and now is trying to reestablish that reputation. And as part of that, needs to demonstrate to the international community in the dollar system. This is all fiat dollar stuff, but needs to establish, hey, we have controls. Our money is on the cleaner side now, and we want to prove to you that we have these controls. And so we do have KYC, we do have specific rules, and that rebuilding of your fiat money reputation takes time. And so there is a lot of KYC rules here. Some of them have been dialed back. They went a little crazy right at the beginning, and they've dialed some of them back. But
Do you think that Bitcoiners, um, as we become more and more here and kind of perhaps a coalition forms, do we have influence here on?
absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. And remember that a lot of this KYC stuff, that's when you're using the fiat system,
yeah.
right? If you want to avoid KYC, just do everything in Lightning,
Mhm.
right? You pay in Lightning, it's completely anonymous, right? It's like, I think one of the things that's amazing is how Lightning has proliferated and really has not picked up a lot of the attention around the fact that there is no KYC, there is no blockchain forensics, there's nothing. When you make a Lightning payment, it's completely anonymous.
Mm.
There's basically no way to track that. And so if you want to stay away from the KYC in El Salvador, just live the Bitcoin Lightning lifestyle, which you can definitely do.
Oh yeah.
And so there are ways to completely stay out of the KYC system. See, it's a KYC system. It's when you want to interface with dollars. It's when you want that Bitcoin bank. It's when you want to be a part of the dollar system. You kind of have to play by their rules.
Mhm. Okay, let's get into your other projects. I
Yes.
know there's the Bitcoin hardware store.
Yeah, so I opened up the Bitcoin hardware store with Ronnie. So I met Ronnie the first moments when I got here in El Zonte. Met him at a Bitcoin Beach meetup, and he ended up helping me find my first place here. And came to me and said, "Hey, I've got this great idea. I want to open we need a Bitcoin hardware store. We need a center. We need a place where you can ask questions about Bitcoin, where you can buy the physical side of Bitcoin, where we have the textbooks, the education. I want to build something like this, and having what feels like decades of Bitcoin business experience, it's like, hey, can you help me? Like, you know how to build Bitcoin brands. Can we do this together? And I said, yeah, let's do it. It'd be a great way for me to get my name out, great way for me to get established here. And so we started the Bitcoin hardware store in February of 2024. We opened up the store and it's been hugely successful. We're now opening up little micro stores all over the place, and it's been a really really fun ride. And so we've helped a lot of people, answered a lot of questions, sold a lot of hardware, and it's bigger than it looks. Again, it looks like this little store, but we're doing a lot of revenue, and so it's
Really?
great. It's great. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great.
Yeah, it's been remarkable. I remember when you guys were constructing the store, and I was like, wow, you got prime location.
Yes.
First thing you see when you come into El Zonte.
Right.
Then I would say, it's becoming a staple here in the Bitcoin community in El Salvador. It's a place where you have to go to check
You got to
out.
visit. Yeah, it's a candy store. We got all the toys, all the fun Bitcoin stuff. Whether you're an individual or business owner, we're seeing a lot of Salvadorian business owners coming in now. They want the passes. They want more education.
I think adding the educational component to it all was a good move.
Yeah.
Because I brought people to the Bitcoin hardware store. I would run retreats, and we would have our vans park in front and just Ronnie put on a few workshops for us.
Yeah, it's part of the experience.
And so it was already becoming a destination. And the educational component to it really helped also sell the products.
Absolutely.
Because after the little workshop, all of a sudden everybody enters the store and buys their hardware.
And when people come in the store, we say, do you have any questions about Bitcoin? Which is a rhetorical question, because even I have questions about Bitcoin. And so people come in, they go, and we get a variety of different answers to that. But it's sort of like, do you have any questions about Bitcoin? And how can we help? And we have this, and we got these new shirts that everybody wears. They say, ask me about Bitcoin on the back of them. And we're really really trying to help people understand Bitcoin, because no matter your level, you have more questions.
Oh yeah, even me, and I've been in
course
Bitcoin for a long time. And there's it's been on the back burner, but I need to definitely get
Step
up
it
to
up.
date on what's happening. And
everybody does, and the problem is, even if you knew everything about Bitcoin today, there's a whole bunch of shit that's about to happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so it's impossible to stay on top of it, and that's okay. And that's why we're here to help.
What are the plans for the store? Any plans? Are you gonna
yes.
branch out?
Yeah, so
it's becoming a brand, by the way.
Yeah, totally. And so the biggest thing is the Bitcoin Hardware Store Mini, which are these little shelving units, glass and metal shelving units that keep all of our hardware in them. They have electricity, lights, everything, and a little storage bodega in the bottom. And these Bitcoin Hardware Store Minis, we're rolling them out to different locations. There's already one in Berlin at the Berlin Community Center. And the idea is that it's like a micro franchise or a mini franchise, where if you have a Bitcoin community center somewhere in the world, there's lots of them. There's Pub Key in New York, or Hash House here, or Casa de Satoshi in Mexico. There's lots of little sort of Bitcoin community centers or houses, and they want to be able to sell hardware and answer questions and leverage our brand. And so we're selling these structures and rolling them out all over the world. So wow. We're super, super excited. Yeah, we've got a handful of them, handful of locations already locked down. And the first one that's actually deployed is in Berlin. And the idea is that it's just like a little mini store. It piggybacks on existing enthusiast space and an existing enthusiast who has our software, who can sell our products through the app. And the same way we do in the store, we have our own little web app that we sell our products through. And so they have access to the same system. They can sell products. And they're integrated into our whole to our inventory system and everything, and so it's
amazing,
super cool. Yeah, so excited about that. You're going to start to see the Bitcoin Hardware Store Minis all over the place, and we've had a lot of interest because people are like, "Hey, we want a Bitcoin hardware store. We want this," and we already have the relationships with the manufacturers. We're authorized distributors, and we've got the formula. And the trick is, El Salvador can support a Bitcoin hardware store, but a lot of other countries, it still is slow, right? So it's like, would we build a whole retail store? let's leverage the existing space and the existing enthusiasts
Absolutely.
and do it in a way that's way less expensive and can sort of grow, on
Yeah, you get your
pace.
foot in the door.
And
With
then
a
if these cities are really popular, then okay, then we'll talk about building our own in-house company-owned location, and but that's farther away.
Okay, so it seems those two projects, the um, Lightning Network project,
Yep.
and the Bitcoin hardware store, very
Yep.
much in line and very much apparent that it's Bitcoin centric.
Yes,
Like,
then this is a problem. I'm Bitcoin, Bitcoin, Bitcoin every day, all day, and I'm can get a little bit worried about burning out sometimes because I'm like, it can be a little crazy if it's Bitcoin, Bitcoin, Bitcoin. It's nice to have a bit of diversity in your life, and so I don't know if
that
you.
brings us here.
And then yeah, so welcome to North Wine, and my other passion in life is great wine, and I can start at the beginning of
Let's hear it.
how it started. So when I moved to El Salvador, love living here, love so much about El Salvador, but the wine selection here is very limited. And wine comes in a bunch of different segments. The wine that's already here is sort of the bottom segment, the basic, the Tuesday wines, the normal wines, and whether that's a $3 bottle, $8 bottle, $20 bottle, whatever. It's sort of the regular wines, and there is almost no middle, high, or ultra high wine here, almost none, and probably for good reason because it was essentially a war-torn country, and people didn't have a lot of money for fine red wines and fine white wines. And so, but if I'm going to live here, I don't want my wine discovery journey to end. And when you think about wine in Canada, America, or Europe, you go into these wine stores, and I mean, you'll never get to the bottom of the store. I mean, there is so much wine, there's so much selection. You can discover, there's a lifetime of wine discovery in these stores. And that's for me the most fun thing about wine is discovering new wines. And um, every day trying new stuff. Not every day, but trying new stuff every time I'm drinking wine. I really like to try new stuff.
You're a
And
sommelier.
no, not officially, not officially. So the sommelier is the technical term for someone who's really good at wine, understands the different regions, different grapes, all this the technical side of
So
things.
maybe a wine aficionado.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and I'll get into sommeliers, but the the so in Canada, Europe, and America, there's tons of wine selection. It's bottomless. Here, there's really only sort of the entry level wines, and it's been the same wine for years. The guys that are bringing it in, maybe they've tried bringing in other stuff and haven't been successful, but the wines they have here are quite basic. And if you ask any American, Canadian, or European tourist who comes here, they're like, "Where's the wine? Like, there's no like broad selection of wine. What's here is very limited, and it's very and not to be disrespectful, but just a little immature. It's not mature. It's not a mature selection. And when you go to the liquor stores, you sort of see everything. It kind of seems like it, it's all just been kind of it's a guesswork. There isn't a lot of strategy to it. And so for me, I want to keep discovering wine for the rest of my life, and I want to keep living in El Salvador for the rest of my life. So I said, all right, I gotta get into this. And about a year ago, started looking into this, started looking into what it would take to not just open a wine store, but to develop a wine list, develop relationships with producers, export the wine from the various regions, transport it here under certain temperature conditions, import it here legally with all the paperwork, warehouse it, and then have a retail store. And so there's actually, it's a whole chain of events that had to be looked at because anybody can open a wine store here. It's actually pretty easy to get your retail liquor license, but then you're dependent on the existing um,
Infrastructure.
wine infrastructure that's already here. And the problem here is the wine infrastructure. It's the guys that are bringing it in. There's some big companies here, and they bring in lots of alcohol, liquors, beers, all kinds of stuff. But and so they're big companies, but their wine programs are just not. They're really not up to the standards that I'm used to.
So you basically built the system
From scratch.
from scratch.
Yeah. So there's actually this just looks like a tiny little 10 by 20 wine store, but the amount of moving parts to get to this point, it's a full stack
And how long did that take you?
in the better part of a year.
And what was that process like? Was there Was it pretty seamless or easy, or was there
Um,
frustrating moments? Was
I
there a lot of hassle or?
so a lot of delays, a lot of delays, a lot of discovery, a lot of learning about things. I'm everywhere I was going. I've never exported wine from a country before. I go to the liquor store and buy the wine.
Mm,
Never exported wine, and so there's a lot of discovering, how this is going to work. And so, if I could do it all over again, it would probably take 2 months, right?
mm.
But because I had to learn how everything worked, I had to figure everything out from scratch. And so, um, it was a long process. And
Yeah,
so,
and that's actually a good point to bring up. Over here, because there isn't, systems and processes in place in a lot of industries, you have to you have to figure it out. Like you have to be a professional problem solver over here.
at professional problems, that's a great term. Yeah,
Yeah,
you absolutely have to.
and you have to be a pioneer too, and you have to enjoy it, right? Like you
Yeah,
gotta,
you can't let it boil you over.
yeah.
You have to enjoy it. You have to enjoy the struggle and the challenge. That you said it exactly right,
Mm,
because there's so many little things that'll just drive you crazy.
mm,
And I have a whole right now. Our initial wine list is all from California. So the first load is just from California. So I had to develop all the relationships with, well, vineyards in California. I tried tons of different wines, narrowed down my wine list to a specific wine list that I really wanted to bring in, developed relationships, bought the wine, moved it to what's called a consolidation warehouse in California, I got a sea container, filled up a sea container at temperature. So I'll take a step back here. This business is a combination of a few different concepts that's all been kind of rolled into one. So this is a wine store, a wine list, and a tasting room, all kind of rolled into one. I'm kind of blurring the lines between the three, and for a bunch of different reasons. I'm doing a lot of things at once here. When you go into a wine store in America or Canada or Europe, and you just see like aisles and aisles of product. Yes, the wine store has done a bit of curating. They've curated, what they think you might like. But
I'm thinking of Total Wine here.
right,
Hmm.
you walk into Total Wine, and if you are a normal person, Joe Sixpack, and you walk into Total Wine, there is so much to choose from. You are totally intimidated, and they can kind of guide you a little bit. But what do you pick? I mean, what do you pick? It's just massive. And so, one of the things I'm trying to do is say, I'm not just going to be this massive wine warehouse. I want to be a wine list, just like at a restaurant. When you open up a restaurant menu and they've got a wine list, they kind of help you. They have this narrow wine list. It's like you can kind of pick based on region, grape, and price, and say, okay, this one is good. And a good wine list will really kind of guide you. You'll kind of naturally land where you think you want to be. And so I wanted to build a specific wine list, a rotating wine list that's always rotating. It's not the same wine. So right now in El Salvador, it's the same wines for years. My wine list rotates every month, and we've got new wines already on the way. I've got wines that are here that are not released yet, and so I'm really, really excited about that. And then the other thing is when you go into a Total Wine or you go into a big wine store, when you do finally pick a bottle, you're completely taking a chance on the bottle. You have no idea if you like it or not. And some of them have little tasting areas, and they might do tasting events or whatever, but at the end of the day, they're expecting you to take a chance on the bottle. And for me, I've tried a lot of wine, I've bought a lot of wine, I bought a lot of shitty wine, and it's aggravating because I'm like, I don't want to keep wasting 40 or $50 or whatever on these bottles of wine. I want to know that it's good. I want to buy with confidence. And so the third element, so we're a wine store, we're a wine list, but we're also a tasting room. And so you'll notice all the wine is behind the counter here,
Hmm.
and every bottle is open. So when you come in here, we say, listen, have you been here before? Is there anything on the menu you see? Or would you like us to kind of take you on a tour? And we've got the most beautiful glassware in El Salvador. We brought in stunning glassware down.
Hmm.
We sell the glassware. And we will take you on a wine tour and say, okay, try this for me, try this for me, try this for me. And it's not a tasting, like you don't get like a glass. You're getting like two little tastes. But it lets you try the wine and find something you actually like. And within a couple of tastes, I can kind of guide you into, what you might like. And if you look at our wine list, the way it's sort of spread out and the way it's built, it's not disorganized. It's incredibly strategic. And so this is sort of a whole new concept. I don't know if it's been tried anywhere. It's something I've been thinking about for a while because of these frustrations I've had with
Sure,
wine.
it's your own,
My
you
own
know,
spin, yeah.
well, it's also driven from your own experiences and your own, desires,
Totally. I'm like
right?
what this could be. And I actually look at this as a model that could scale the whole world. I'm like, we're going to start in El Salvador because it's fertile ground. And
Mm.
because I can start in a place where I don't have, ravaging competition. The wines that I have here are the best wines in El Salvador already. And so, but if I can prove this model, I think it scales everywhere. I think this is how everybody wants to buy wine. They don't want to take chances. They don't want to be intimidated. They don't want to feel stupid, and back to your sommelier comment. I'm not a huge fan of the sommelier, thing, and I go, yeah, there's some people that love that and they're really rich and there's a segment for that. But I'm talking about the middle class, the 90% of normal people that just want to explore and try some great wine or buy a great gift. And I think that market is massive and essentially untapped.
Mm.
And like I'm looking at this, like if I can solve some of the problems with wine, I think I can 10x the industry.
Mm.
I think I can do a lot. And so this is like a tiny little wine tasting room, but this is my sort of R&D location for something much bigger. And El Salvador's enabled me to do it, which
Mm.
is something that's super, super cool.
It would be really interesting and cool if Jamie Robinson, Bitcoiner here in El Salvador, revolutionizes the whole wine industry across the world.
That's what I'm trying to do. And
Uh-huh.
and I think, obviously I've got big dreams and big hopes, but I'm like, I think this is how wine should be sold.
Well, and to dream big, that big, I mean, it comes from experience, right? You were at the beginning of the Bitcoin, you know, um, movement, and you onboarded 90,000 people onto Bitcoin through your thing. So, that's the other cool thing about being here. It's hearing people's stories and what they've done and what they've accomplished, and makes you realize, oh man, I should dream bigger. My goals should be bigger as
Why
well.
not?
Yeah, yeah.
Why not? Let's try it and see what happens. And frankly, I'm like same thing. How El Salvador just makes sense.
Mhm.
It makes a lot of sense. I'm like, this just makes a lot of sense. And I'm like, I think this is how it should be.
Mhm.
And so and what's great is being here because I'm getting this first mover advantage. I'm bringing in so that we've got the low wines already here, but now I'm bringing in the mediums and the highs. I don't have the ultra highs yet. We'll get there, like some of the crazy bottles. But I'm bringing in the mediums and the highs, and they're already the greatest wines in El Salvador.
Mhm.
And so that gives me a huge competitive advantage to get started and get my engine
Oh
rolling.
yeah. So that's another big thing here that I try to emphasize, especially when I talk to people and people in building El Salvador, our community,
Hmm.
is right now we have such a first mover advantage to whatever hopes, dreams, aspirations you have.
Yeah.
Like you come here and you're that person,
Yeah.
right? Because again, the economy and the market has so immature
Hmm.
for reasons, but now it's starting to develop.
Hmm.
And if you got an idea, you're probably the first person here who's trying that idea
You
out. So this
you can
is,
be the wine guy, you can be the this guy, you can be the that guy pretty easily.
yeah, but that window of opportunity is closing, right? People are coming
Hmm.
down here, they're realizing that, and they're going for it like you, you
Yeah,
know.
totally.
Okay. Well, first of all, congrats on
Thank you.
opening up North Wine Company. I can't wait
Thank
to
you.
try the wine. I can't
Yeah,
wait
I
to
can't
taste
wait to give you a
it.
tasting.
Yeah.
I can't wait to give you a tasting.
Um, let's talk about the future, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about El Salvador, what you see happening in the next few years, where you see this going.
Um, I see a lot of construction. I see a lot of building. I see a lot more people moving here.
Mhm.
I see a lot of Salvadoreños returning, which is super beautiful. Um, and I think the pain points are evaporating.
Mhm.
I think things are getting a lot easier. It's going to be easier to move here. It's going to be easier to find American class housing. I think I just see the engine just churning, and I look at the Singapores and the Dubais, and I look at those, and I go, that's what it's going to look like here. It's going to be super futuristic.
You think?
Yeah, I think it's going to be super futuristic here. They've, with the geothermal electric generation,
Hmm.
drilling into the volcanoes and getting the steam, and now being a net exporter of electricity to the region, like El Salvador's already exporting to the region. They are very well positioned for the electric future, whether it's cars or electric whatever, production, manufacturing. Um, I see El Salvador as looking like the Jetsons pretty soon here. Like I
Wow.
think it's going to look pretty futuristic here,
Interesting.
and they're everything they're doing. they're getting to rebuild everything. Where you look back at Canada and the U.S., they've got to rebuild stuff that they've already built. Here, it's like, well, we're due for the refresh.
Yeah.
Then let's build it. Let's make it beautiful. And I've seen some of the mock-ups of some of the condo buildings they're going to build and some of the developments, and I go, whoa, these are stunning. And I think it's going to look pretty futuristic here. It's going to take time, but construction here happens quickly, and things are moving quickly. So I see us being the capital of the region, and
Anything you're worried about or
um,
concerned about the development of the country?
mm, um, the order of operations, making sure that this happens and then this happens and then this happens. If some things move too quickly, making sure that when you grow really really quickly, making sure that traffic is in order and making sure that things are thought through. And when you move really quickly, is there enough water? Is there enough of this? Is there enough of that? Some of that stuff I think
Yeah,
about.
move quickly and break things is kind of a rough strategy for a country, right?
Yeah, so it's
For a
like just
business might be different, but like, yeah,
make sure that the order of operations are right. I also worry about there's lots of people that are moving here, but I want to make sure that it's the right crowd too. And I don't know how you do this, but I feel super safe here. It's one of the things I said right at the beginning is I call this safety country, and but any criminal can get on a plane and fly here, and so I do worry about. I don't think crime will migrate here in a
that's interesting.
crime won't migrate here en masse. It won't exist here, but people can teleport here, cause trouble, and leave.
Yeah.
And that's something that does worry me. Is once people see the success, they see us Bitcoiners, they see us out here living in our citadel. How do we make sure that people aren't coming here, causing trouble, and then leaving?
Yeah.
And they have no skin in the game, and that's something that concerns me. I don't know how you solve that. Um,
So I have a similar concern, one of many, but um, is yeah, as this nation becomes prosperous, that attracts great people, but it also attracts people who want to take advantage of that,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so being in crypto, you just see whenever there's money coming in somewhere, proliferation of scams and fraud.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean that's gonna happen. Um, like you said, it's gonna be interesting how they mitigate that, but I think it can be mitigated.
Yeah.
But yeah, that to give an example as far as like how a prosperous nation could also attract criminals.
Yeah, and
That's
just
one way.
and I think just figure out a way to manage it. Figure out a way. The police here are pretty effective. You see stuff happens, and an hour later they're on Twitter. They got the guy. And so it's like, how are you even gonna get out in time?
Mm.
And I would just want to make sure that as there is right now it's very easy to immigrate to El Salvador. It's very easy to get here and get your residence. And I think as it gets better and better and better, I'm like, hey, we want to make sure that we almost tighten that up a little bit, and say, hey, should there be more skin in the game that you have to do. Right now, obviously, don't need it. We need more people. We need more builders. But I want to make sure that the transition. I saw in Canada how mass migration really deteriorated the society,
Mm.
and I'm a little tender from that. And
Do you
I
think that the foreigners coming here are gonna have a significant impact then in terms of?
as long as they're the right stuff.
Hmm.
My view on immigration is, and I'm an immigrant, right? I'm an immigrant.
Hmm.
My view on immigration is you have your quality of living in your society, and immigrants should be adding to that. They should be averaging up the society. If you have your standard of society and immigrants are below that and they're averaging down your society, that doesn't work. And so, um,
Wow,
I think
that's
that
an insightful comment for sure.
I think that everybody who comes here should be adding. And my only, and this is a future concern, is that it was really easy to immigrate here, like really, really easy. And I'm like, I just want to make sure that the people that are coming here are adding. And I think that we owe it, as more and more people start to come and there may be a rush to come here. It's like, hold on, don't let mass migration um, dilute your society. And one thing, I do really enjoy being a part of. I'm not ancestral. I'm not part of the homogeny here because I'm not, a Salvadorian ancestrally, but I enjoy being a part of a society that does have that homogeneity.
Yeah.
It's enjoyable and it's cohesive, and I like it. And I think it's like having the cream of the crop immigrants that come and add, and great doctors, great this, great that come and add value. Great, but make sure that it's a subset.
That is so interesting. I agree. I have that realization too. I like being part of a homogenous
It's
society.
nice.
Everyone gets along, they're polite, there's
Yeah.
manners, right? People say buenos dias.
Everybody says good morning.
There's always seems to be a helping hand
Yeah.
somewhere, right? It feels like we're all in this together.
There is this cohesiveness.
Yeah. And yeah, when you get a multicultural society,
The melting pot, it doesn't, and I saw it in Canada, and they said, oh, diversity is our strength, and I'm like, not really.
yeah.
Nobody trusts each other. Everyone's living in their own little parallel societies, and I look at Canada as, if it's not already a failed state, it failed. And I think one of the reasons is in the last 15 years, every little group got completely diluted, and the main group of European Christians got completely diluted, and it broke down the homogeneity of the society. And I want to make sure that like right now immigration is easy and we need more people. It's not like there's a huge flood of people coming here, not yet, compared to mass migration, like millions and millions. But as it grows, I want to make sure those controls are in place to protect the Salvadoran culture. And I say that as an immigrant,
Speaking of that, I do want to touch on this. We got to wrap up here soon, but I'm curious on your perspective on this situation. El Salvador is going to open up their investment markets or capital markets and so forth. There's going to be more money coming in, at least from what I can see. I don't know if you agree. And I wonder what that does to kind of disrupt that that cohesiveness. Is that something that you think about or you've thought about?
Not really. So I think there's two paths. There's stagnation and protectionism, and like, no, we're not going to grow. We're not going to build. We're going to keep it as it is. Rents will stay super low. People can just have a shack on beach in prime real estate. There is that view, or there is the view that we're going to progress. We're going to build. We're going to kick ass. And a rising tide lifts all boats. And I think the most important thing is that there is a huge focus on growing the middle class. There's a huge focus on wage competition. There's a huge focus on there really wasn't a middle class in El Salvador before. There was a little one, but not really. It was basically 99% of normal people making close to minimum wage, and then the ultra wealthy. And I think Nayib Bukele is doing a great job at expanding the middle class. And so, as long as the focus is expanding the middle class, yeah, sure, those beachfront properties are now completely out of reach. But everyone is making better wages. If you bring everybody up as part of that process, yes, some people get displaced, but
standard of living across the board goes up.
Totally. And now, wages, there's great wage competition. More people than ever are making $1,000 a month, $2,000 a month, $4,000 a month. And before, you just didn't have any of that growth. And people use the term like gentrification or colonization or any of that kind of stuff. And I go, yeah, but before everybody was making $400 a month, $300 a month. And now you've got this incredible wage competition. Everybody's lifting up. Yes, some guys that had shacks in prime real estate.
It's not going to be perfect, right?
Yeah, some people are going to get displaced. Some little areas and strips are going to get gentrified. But as long as it's done right, everybody wins, and wages go up, and everyone's standard of living goes up. I mean, you see the traffic and everything on the road. I'm like, yeah, because everyone's getting rich and buying cars. You get this whole middle class that is ballooning, and they're getting off the bus and they're buying cars. I'm happy for them. I'm like, great, buy a car.
You get to experience the joys of traffic.
Welcome to yeah, exactly. Join traffic with me, buddy. Welcome to the American dream. Now you have your own car. And so my view is, as long as the middle class remains the priority and getting the most amount of people into the middle class, bring the money, bring the development, build.
Interesting.
Drill, baby, drill.
All right. We'll close off with, if you have any other parting thoughts, words of wisdom.
come for a complimentary tasting at North Wine.
Yeah.
We're really trying to reinvent the wine industry, and we've been super busy. The response has been incredible. Come check out my new project, and
Do you accept Bitcoin?
of course, we accept it. So we don't have a lot of Bitcoin branding here. Of course, we're on BTC Map. But every customer, when they go to pay, it's cash card or Bitcoin, and we ask that to every customer. So the customers that aren't Bitcoiners, they're like, Bitcoin, really? And we take Lightning and on-chain, and absolutely we take Bitcoin. And come for a complimentary tasting. We'd love for you to try some wine, and we want you to discover something great because we got some great stuff, and we're always getting new great stuff. And so, and we're the only guys that are really taking it seriously here, for a lot of reasons. And so, if you check our website out, www.north.wine, we'd love to have you.
Awesome. Well, listen, congrats on everything. Your story's super inspirational. What you've
Thanks,
done
man.
here is inspirational.
Thank you.
And I'm excited to continue to see your growth and take some wine.
Yeah, let's take some wine.